It's Boiler Room Radio, Wednesday night, 2-hour edition. So I'm going to be with you for the next 120 minutes. And so is that guy over there in Virginia. His name's Lance Musser. Good evening, Lance Musser.
Hey, good evening, Jimmy.
How's it going, man?
You know, no complaints. A little wet. The tornadoes warnings have been up, a lot of the day up in Williamsburg and areas.
Right.
But bad rain, high winds, but no tornadoes that I heard of.
Yeah, I've been posting pictures out of Florida and South Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, Louisiana, all over Facebook, man. They got some really serious flooding down in Florida, like 26 inches of rain in less than a day. Pretty
Pensacola,
ugly. Pensacola, yeah.
Underwater. I was listening to that AMHQ that I'm turned on to now.
Yeah.
And the guy said he's been a weatherman for 50 years, and he's in Mobile or something like that, and he's never, ever seen rain like this, ever.
Yeah. There was a video I posted, I think it was out of Alabama somewhere. You could see the storm front coming in. It was a time-lapse camera on top of a building, and the name of the video is The Bottom Fell Out. And it literally does, out of the bottom of that storm, man, just a big bush of rain just gushed right out of the bottom of that cloud, man. About 3 or 4 different times. It was something to watch. I've never seen anything act like that. I've been watching weather for probably a good 10 years of my own, maybe a little longer than that. I started watching it when I was driving a truck, cause I wanted to keep up with where I was going and what was coming. So it's definitely kind of weird. It seems like it's circling around too. The low pressure is not just maintaining a straight course up the East Coast. It's kind of moving and wandering around, and I don't know. It's weird. And we got some super cold air come down through here. Like they got snow in Iowa today, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't get above 60 here today, and it's been pushing 80 for the last 4 days.
When I woke up this morning, it was like 72, 73, and it was in the high 50s, overnight. So we were at that, how the tornadoes always need that cold air up north and the southern air. We were in the southern part of it for sure.
Right. Just freaky weather. That's why I was telling you, keep your eye on it, no matter what they say. Because some of those drops for the tornadoes and stuff were pretty close to you.
Mm-hmm. And like we've spoke about on previous shows, I think this is going to be just if you're a weather watcher, I think this will be an interesting year for you. Mm-hmm. Already is. And we're already, only a quarter of the way into the year. A little bit more than a quarter.
You got the pork bong all safe, right? It's in the garage.
It's, not in the garage now. The boat is in the garage, but I'll tell you what, we've got one of those huge tarps, the silver line tarps. Mm-hmm. And there's not it is so sweet. And it's right up next to the shed that's out back. So it's buffed by one side.
Right on.
And that thing is so wrapped up tight. You couldn't, it's the same cover that was on the boat all winter. They kept the boat dry.
Good deal. Just wanted to make sure.
Oh yeah. Got a job today too. While I was bowling,
awesome sauce.
50-person, family reunion. They said, well, we're not sure how many people are coming down from West Virginia. I said, I don't do possum and squirrel and stuff like that. I'm just doing
pulled pork, man. Don't know how to pull squirrel yet.
And some yard bird. I don't know how to do possum yet though. So if they're West Virginia, if I offended any West Virginia people, I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I know.
Speaking of pork bong, let's jump into the Smoke'em's Market Minute. Let everybody know the debacle on Wall Street still going strong.
Where to start?
Manipulation.
Yeah, where to start? The 500 and change or 600 and change off the charts. The way that the economy reacted to old Yellen talking today. Yellen. And the bonds even, went the bonds dipped, which was good for everybody buying a home. So interest rates got better on the housing side. And if you had a 401k, you probably gained 2%, back in it today. So starting off, Fed,
making some bank.
As long as you can get it out before it falls again, sure. Cause the Fed is to keep trimming the stimulus as the economy shakes off the stall. Can you imagine sitting in the meeting, poring over all the data, and then get handed a report that you've got to come out and read, which is what, the part I'm getting ready to read.
Without laughing or crying.
Exactly. Can you imagine being a fly on the wall?
Or crying. I mean, it's cry worthy. So
I would love to be a fly on the wall in that. Because the Federal Reserve said it will keep trimming the pace of asset purchases as the economy shakes off the winter doldrums.
And we're going to talk about that here in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Putting the central bank on a course to end the unprecedented stimulus program by the close of this year. Growth has, and this is in quotation, picked up recently after a government report showed gross domestic
picked up
product
and ran out of the country.
barely grew in the first quarter. However, household spending appears to be rising quickly.
Shit.
Well, if the government has got half of the country on their payroll, so they've still got to get their check or whatever it is, the welfare unemployment. So they're going to go spend that money still. So they're counting the money that they're giving to the people that are turning around and spending it as a recovered economy. Is that not just funny? I mean, is that not just
laugh-worthy?
It's laugh-worthy. Tapering is on autopilot. You need a much bigger swing in the data to stop the tapering and much more weakness on the GDP. So, I mean, basically this, the New York-based economist, he's saying it's on autopilot. It's going to keep on going. But even though they're talking about stopping that.
Hang on a minute now. Let's just go ahead and jump into this right now. Just to let everybody know, the taper is on paper. The taper is not actually happening. Okay. The only thing that they are doing is reallocating where the money is shown to go on paper. They are still printing the same amount that they were printing 6 months ago, that they were printing a year ago. Actually, it's gone up a little bit. I think it went from 90 billion to 130 billion or close to it. So this whole taper is bullshit. It's not happening. It's just reallocation of the fund expenditure, paperwork.
Which I've said it before. Right. If there's not even that much volume in mortgages being originated every month, why do they keep saying that they're spending all this money on mortgages when there's not even that many mortgages being originated? Which is what you're leading into. It's a
lie. It's lining their pockets.
I don't know about that.
Like I told you. Well, it's basically, I mean, they're moving toxic assets out of the banks and giving the banks money, right? Fake money, printed money, zeros on computers. And the Fed owns all of those mortgages. So yes. It's like a big real estate grab, right? And they're actually lining their pockets with them because what are they going to do? I mean, some of the banks, I've heard stories over the last couple of days, and you have too, because I've been passing you the clips.
Yeah.
Some of these banks are not even foreclosing on the homes anymore. They're like, I don't want that shit on my books. We'll let the family stay in it. We'll just act like it doesn't even exist. So the people aren't having to pay their mortgage. All they got to do is keep the bills on. They stay in their house, and the bank says poo. Because they don't want that toxic. I mean, that's what's causing them to fail. And we're going to get into the whole. Go ahead.
Oh, at one point, there were so many people in that boat that, yeah, and this is in the last 2 years. I mean, there are just so many people, and I know a number of them that have lived or are living in their homes for 12 months or more, haven't made any payments, and but the bank hasn't foreclosed.
Right.
Well, I mean, they're saying shit. They're trying to get
they'll send the papers, but they're not sending the sheriff to kick them out.
Right, exactly.
Because they don't want that mortgage sitting on their books. They're like, okay, we're just going to leave where it's at. Let the people take care of the home. It's their home anyway. Well, just keep power on, keep the water on, make sure nothing happens to it. And okay, we'll come get it in the summertime when it's warm and you can live in your car. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, that'll actually lead me into one of the stories that I had up here because it was briefly touched base the other day on a foreclosed homeowner that beats the big bank, and the judge voided the sale of the man's home.
Yeah, he did.
I briefly touched on the story.
But then there's the other chick that lost it for $6.30.
The late fee. Yeah, the late fee. But this story was interesting enough. Remember, I said I would do some more research on it, and I did, did.
You did?
I did. But the judge, George N. Bowden, who is, know his name, and we gave him props for it. Yep. Following the 2008 economic collapse caused by big banks, Bradburn fell upon hard times. He turned to his mortgage servicer for help in keeping his home, only to hear the advice given by seemingly every servicer and credit card company. Because he was still current on his mortgage, he was told that he had to miss a payment before he could qualify for refinancing. And that's true.
Whoops.
Because they wanted you to ding your credit so you couldn't buy another home anywhere else.
Right.
Like so many other debtors before him, Bradford did. But the conundrum of bank-induced consequences was such a convoluted case in the minefield of mortgage foreclosure litigation that even legally trained judges' minds struggled with the muddle of facts. Immediately after he missed the payment, the Bank of America snake constricted around its prey. Bradburn was denied refinancing for being late.
Foreclosed on his home.
A dispute arose over how much money he continued to owe on the house, not uncommon in the quicksand of additional interest and penalties inflicted on delinquent homeowners, even when their delinquency was caused by a bank's demand. And in the midst of Bradburn's continuing effort to seek assistance from predatory lending institution, Bank of America foreclosed extrajudicially on his home and sold it out from under him. But the Bank of America constrictor lives in a contingent-wide jungle designed to enrich the bankers through a complex secondary mortgage market where beneficiaries of promissory note and mortgage instruments and the actual holders of the mortgage change hands regularly. Now, you're going to get a great kick out of this. The name of this insurer's paradise is the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, or MERS. Isn't there a disease called
Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome has been killing by the dozens over in Saudi Arabia, Egypt.
Yeah, it is. No kidding. But
we're named after a disease.
Thankfully, this judge concluded that the institutions violated both the strict requirements of the Deed of Trust Act and the Consumer Protection Act prior to the home's foreclosure. So he found found against Bank of America, and then told him that he can continue to sue the banksters, and more importantly, for now, he can keep his home.
And what about the people that bought it?
Well, they're out of luck because that was a, friend of the bank's kind of thing.
Well, good.
However, the best foreclosure story ever. Last year, a man from Lovech, Bulgaria, who could not afford to pay the mortgage for his house, gave his last penny to demolish it right before the banksters came to take it away. The land that the house was built on was not included in the mortgage, which is why here in the States, you can't get a mortgage without the land being tied to it.
Right.
The remains of the building, was not included in the mortgage, so the family decided to destroy the house and give it to the new owner. The remains of the building were loaded on a truck
and dumped in
and dumped in the parking lot where the contract for the mortgage was signed.
Is your bloody own, mate?
The man who was debt to the bank and his whole family entered the office, started crying, begging for mercy, but they said he couldn't make an exception, and the family had a week to vacate the home. So what did they do? They tore the home down and dumped it in his parking lot. Take that, you bankers.
Outstanding young man.
Mm-hmm.
Old man. I think he was in his 60s.
Yeah, he was 61, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Just lovely. Love to hear those stories. I hope he had some place to go. I'm sure family took him in or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's great.
One thing about the bankers' deaths, and I'm just going to switch courses onto the bankers' deaths here for a second. Wall Street mega banks crashed the U.S. financial system in 2008. Hundreds of thousands of financial industry workers lose their job. Then Beginning late last year, a rash of suspicious deaths start to occur among current and former bank employees. Next, we learned that 4 of the Wall Street mega banks likely hold over $680 billion face amount of life insurance on all their workers, payable to the banks, not the families. And that's totally allowed.
But let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the employee know that insurance policy is taken out on them?
No.
I think that's
they
illegal.
have no right to know. Yeah, they have no right to know. Even under the Freedom of Information Act, they're told the information constitute trade secrets.
Look. If you're worth more money dead than alive, you have the right to know.
You would think.
Am I right?
You would think.
Okay, keep going. Sorry.
According to the Centers of Disease Control, the life expectancy of a 25-year-old male with a bachelor's degree or higher is 81 years of age. But in the past 5 months, 5 highly educated J.P. Morgan male employees in their 30s and 1 former employee aged 28 have died under suspicious circumstances, including 3 of whom allegedly leaped off of buildings. A statistical rarity even during the height of the financial crisis in 2008. And this is what struck me. There is one other major obstacle to brushing away these deaths as random occurrences. They are not happening at J.P. Morgan's closest peer bank, Citigroup. Mm-hmm. Both J.P. Morgan and Citigroup are global financial institutions, both commercial banking and investment banking operations. Their employee counts are similar. 260,000 for J.P. Morgan versus 251 for Citigroup. Both J.P. Morgan and Citigroup also own massive amounts of bank-owned life insurance policies.
Wow, they both employ over 250,000 people.
Yep, each one of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so that is interesting that they're all coming from one particular banking organization.
Imagine that.
And then, why wouldn't they be coming from everywhere if it's bankers that are dying, or is it targeted bankers?
That's a very good question.
Mm-hmm. My last story, before we move on to the vids, is the BRICS. We talked about the BRICS last night.
Right.
And granted, this story was on RT,
Monday.
so Monday, the other night. They're building a parallel IMF. We didn't speak too much about it, but it's pretty scary in the fact that they would be, avoiding the IMF, but they're tired of us stalling for. They're trying to reform the way people vote. And then the Americans keep stalling on it. Mm-hmm. So they're saying, screw you. Let's start our own with all the BRIC nations, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Mm-hmm. They're fed up with ongoing American stalling at the reforming of the voting system, and they've been working their way towards a genuine new world order, pivoting away from the influence of the U.S.-centric Western financial system, and it makes sense to create a counterweight to the IMF, a supranational bank, to emerging East. So let's see how this goes, but I think the dollar is dying its slow death. We're seeing it. We'll see it over the next couple months as these other.
It's dead in a bunch of nations. We just haven't admitted it.
Well, we haven't. A lot of other people see it in the world.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's already dead in a bunch of nations.
Yeah, we're blind.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not that we're blind. We just, hang on, toxic hope, whatever you want to call it, right? The government won't admit to it yet. They're like, oh God, those are nations we can't bomb.
Isn't that like Stockholm syndrome or something? Or is that what we all
something
have?
Like that. Yeah. Yeah. Got a bad case of the dumbs.
Yeah, we're loving our kidnappers here.
Mm. So that's it? That's all you got sitting in front of you?
I think that was, because that's a story for later. That's a motivational feel-good story for later, too. Okay, nope, okay. That's it.
All right. So we're going to let Scott have his 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and we'll go from there.
Hello, Hello, this is Scott and this is a Hyper Report. Today's report is sponsored by the free book Ramblings of a Madman. Here are the quotes for various items. First, Russia and Iran. Iran and Russia are negotiating a $10 billion power deal in the face of increasing U.S. financial alienation. Plans include the construction of hydroelectric and thermal generating plants and a new transmission network. Moscow has additionally been discussing the trade of 500,000 barrels a day of Iranian oil for Russian goods with Tehran. So, more evidence of the petrodollar's impending demise.
Whoops.
Next, crush. According to Tom Fitzpatrick, multiple charts indicate that gold and silver may be setting up to punish the shorts with a major upside advance. Perhaps the Goldman Sachs recommendation to their Muppets or customers may come true. Next, trade secrets? It appears that 4 Wall Street mega banks hold over $680 billion in life insurance on their workers that is payable to the banks. Add to this is the fact that beginning last year, a rash of suspicious deaths started to occur among current and former bank employees. So when federal regulators are asked about the connection, they said it was a trade secret? So, is the banking industry a dangerous business or the bankers' profit margins are good enough after they hire hitmen? Next, markets are not rigged. The chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Pinocchio, Mary Jo White, in congressional testimony confidently proclaimed that the markets are not rigged. So, high-frequency trading and fat-finger flash crashes are perfectly normal as well? Anyway, it is interesting that with the gold manipulation crackdown that Deutsche Bank resigned their London-fixed seat. No manipulation? Next, Obama teaching teachers? If the $500 billion Common Core scandal is any indication, the bold new standards plan that Obama wants for teachers' preps is going to go over like a lead balloon. Next, cell phone recording. A man in Miami was arrested for recording another man's arrest with his cell phone. The charge was obstruction of justice. Yikes! Hopefully the officers are charged with false arrest and are soon walking around in orange jumpsuits. Next, too much information. An appeals court ruled that Jersey City asking for prior employers and waivers to release all information to police was not allowed for gun permit applications. Jersey City officials said they disagree with the ruling and will appeal. Needless to say, they are not very appealing. Finally, please prepare now for the escalating economic and social unrest. Good day.
That was a pretty good one. Touched on a lot of topics there.
Yeah, and even some that we just talked about. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's
because we're on top of the game.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Gold and silver. He's always up there. You know, we talk about certain people say that gold is undervalued by 75%. Easily, right. $6,000 an ounce, etc. I've heard other people say that. How come we don't ever consider diamonds in the same category? Or, I mean...
That's a good question, because diamonds were traded a lot.
A lot in gems and everything else, rubies, precious stones. And I was thinking about that because, you know, for a little itty bitty piece of clear AA, you know, clarity, ring, I mean, a little piece is $2,500, you know, for a carat or half a carat or something like that. Why don't we ever hear about
that's what we pay in the United States. That's not what they're paying overseas, though.
Yeah, true. But I just was thinking about that today, and I'm like...
And diamonds are a big turnoff now for a lot of women because they know the whole blood diamond thing and what they're going through down in Africa trying to get them out of the mines. And so, you know, diamonds really have been taking a hit over the last few years.
Yeah. I guess it's up there with ivory.
It's just never, I mean, it's never been a tangible thing, right? It's always like an investment, I reckon.
Well, it's a status.
True. But I don't think they've ever coined a diamond. You know what I mean? I don't think it's ever been used as, I mean, it's traded around the local area.
All right. Okay. I got you. Okay. Now it's a currency. I got you. But, you know, it's very valuable and we just don't hear about it.
Right.
Values as much as you do gold and silver all the time.
And I don't imagine it's going to be worth a shit in a barter situation. I don't think you'd be able to trade your Tiffany ring for, you know, some food or whatever.
Well, I mean, in a shit hits the fan scenario, I'm not sure what good gold and silver fiat currency would be either.
I'm telling you, silver's got medicinal value. No matter what anybody says, I'm going to firmly believe that because silver's been used medicinally forever.
Yes.
So people will still want silver. They'll still want to make colloidal silver. They'll still want to use it for antibacterial soaps. They'll still want to use it for a lot of different stuff. So silver is going to have value. It's going to keep its value. And if you really want to get picky about it, monatomic gold has value too. And you can turn regular gold into monatomic gold through a process like ionization, you know. So.
Yeah. The Anunnaki are coming to get the rest of it to fill their atmosphere holes again, I guess.
We'll see. I'm waiting. See that second son.
I'm waiting.
It's been almost 2 years.
It might be 2 more.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah.
Anyhow, let's see what Greg's got to say.
I'll bet he's got a good one after what happened in the market today, because it's unfathomable that the level of where it's at right now.
Yeah.
I know 2 weeks ago he has egg on his face. I mean, 3 weeks ago he was playing something tanking down to 15.5.
It is Wednesday,
yeah, he's right.
April 30th, 2014. My friends, my beautiful friends, I would imagine some of you out there know why I got this smirk on my face. We're going to talk about that in a minute here. So let's go over today's market action. Well, again, no surprise to any of you that follow this blog. All the major indices again gained, and we're not done. We're not done for this week, in my opinion. Again, and I have been right to the point of ridiculousness with this. I think there are further gains throughout this week, tomorrow and Friday. But next week, we're going to keep our eye on next week. I think we're going to have a sell-off here because of some of the gains that we've put into this market. We're going to capitalize on that. And how I want you to capitalize on that is pay attention to my site, traderschoice.net. I'm going to place positions right there on that site. There's a link right down here in the description of this video. All right, people. So let's talk. A lot of stuff going on here. So what did we find out? Well, laughable information, and that is this, that the Fed is now cutting another $10 billion. They're going to taper another $10 billion. I'm referring to their purchases of bonds and mortgage-backed securities. I'm here to tell all of you, if you don't know already, this is a lie. It's the biggest farce, probably almost in the history of finance. In fact, I think it is the biggest farce in the history of finance. There's no taper. There's never been a taper. These are numbers that they're just spewing out of their mouths, and trying to convince people that they're actually doing this. No, there's no transparency here. We have no idea what they're actually doing. But I can promise you they are not tapering. They've never tapered. And how do we know this to be true? From several reasons. Number one, the market keeps rising and rising and rising, and bond yields keep dropping and dropping and dropping. So right there, there's all the proof that you need to understand that there's no taper here in any way, shape, or form. But what do we know? We know this, people. We have a debt-based economic model. And very simply, all that means is this. Debt in the form of cash has to be borrowed into existence in perpetuity. It can't stop. Once we stop, and once we admit we have a debt problem, the whole system implodes, like the European debt crisis that we don't hear about anymore, because they're trying to fix the situation with more debt. Understand? So zero taper is a lie, and it's an absolute farce. And the proof is right in our faces regarding the equity markets, regarding yields on treasuries. It's laughable. But what did happen? Well, we got another sell-off here with regard to the U.S. dollar, and we saw bond yields, a lot of cash go into bonds, as a matter of fact. So, it's insane. And bond yields did calm down. You almost want to laugh about all this, people. What else is going on? Huge, absolutely huge, and that is this. We found out that first quarter GDP expanded at 0.1%. Just to put a perspective on this for you, last fourth quarter GDP expanded at 2.6%. So people, if you don't understand, we are clearly in a massive economic slowdown here. And you can see the proof of that as well in housing. I've been going over this over and over again. So let's hear the pundits explain how we have an economy that's collapsing, literally here. How is that going to affect people's ability to get work or find meaningful employment or get higher wages or find housing that's more affordable, or anything? It's a joke. And again, this just plays into the whole farce theme that is this video. Again, the taper is nothing but the biggest financial farce in the history of Wall Street. I hope you spread that around because it's the absolute truth here. And the market knows it. It's funny to actually watch this happen and unfold, people. Anyway, so we're just going to take advantage of this in a million different ways. I go over.
Okay, keep talking to your homies. So what do you got to say about that, man?
Well, I mean, it's the same thing that we talked about later, that the bonds went down today and the stock market went up today is laughable at the news. I mean, for anybody to take it seriously, as soon as they got done listening to that, they heard it on the mainstream media, evening news, and then they watched 2.5 Men or Modern Family or whatever shows on after that, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and just went back to watching TV. So they're doing it for the play. I mean, so the American public can, it's an act. They get up there in front of the Carney. What's his name?
Yeah.
Jay Carney or something like that.
The guy that's got all the communist propaganda around his kitchen.
Yeah.
Did you see that Twitter? That was just priceless, dude. I could not. That sums up our entire administration in one picture.
You couldn't have written that any better.
No, that was priceless. That was absolutely priceless.
Foreshadow.
Yep.
But, you know, these people, they're good actors. I mean, that's all they are. They're Hollywood.
And they get well paid, dude. They sponge our money up like, boy, it's just going out of business.
I just want to be a fly on the wall in one of these meetings where they get handed a report and they look at him and go, you really want me to go out there and read this without laughing or making eye rolls or it's laughable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's jump off. I mean, we're still going to stay on the whole market thing, but we're going to go trip over into this Bank of America story. You want to do this? You want me to do this?
No, feel free.
Okay. So I don't know if anybody saw it today. I'm going to drop this link in the chat so everybody can go read it if they feel like it. But Bank of America, they found a $4 billion error. Not million, billion with a B. Billion with a B. So here this is. America's biggest bank. America's biggest bank. I think Bank of America is owned by foreign interest.
Saudis or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. America's biggest bank discovered a $4 billion accounting error on Monday, and it's suspended its share buyback program and planned quarterly dividend. Whoops. Nobody's getting any money. The mistake went unnoticed for several years, and brings into question how healthy the bank is. After reporting the miscalculation to the Federal Reserve, Bank of America will also have to redo its stress test to ensure that it's not too big and has sufficient capital reserves. Stocks have fallen 6.2% on the news, the most since November of 2012. Shares tumbled to $14.95 by market close on New York Monday, erasing all of the 2014 gains completely. The error was sourced to Merrill Lynch. Oh, sure, blame it on somebody else, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where lower-level employees botched the numbers they submitted to the financial authorities for quarterly securities filings. The gaffe also went undiscovered by the bank's board of directors as well as PricewaterhouseCoopers, its external auditor. Everybody just seemed to miss that. Holy cow. The U.S. Federal Reserve also missed the blunder. These people are just on top of it, boy. I'm telling you. You know, you guys better get a new pencil sharpener or something, you bean counters. You're screwing up to the tune of billions.
At least they didn't say that Enron was their accounting people. People don't even remember them. They were one of the first ones to fall.
The stress test called the Comprehensive Capital Analysis and Review, CCAR, is a way for the U.S. Federal Reserve to assess whether financial institutions have adequate capital. The protocol is part of the Dodd-Frank Act, which seeks to avoid the repeat of the 2008 collapse with precautionary regulations. In March, Bank of America passed its Federal Reserve stress test even though it provided faulty information. Citigroup Incorporated, wow, there's that name again, was one of the 5 banks that failed the test. I guess they'll be whacking some more bankers to pad their wallet. According to Bank of America's first quarter earnings report, it has about $134 billion in Tier 1 capital, which has now been reduced to $130. They took $10 billion. Oh, $134 billion. Okay, I thought it said 140. Sorry. Bank of America must address the quantitative errors in its regulatory capital calculations as part of the resubmission and must undertake the review of its regulatory capital reporting to help ensure there are no further errors, said the Fed. Bank of America scooped up Merrill Lynch, also a Wall Street investment giant, in January 2009 after the aftermath of the 2008 American financial crisis, the crash. Bank of America has been led by Brian Moynihan since 2010, who has been tasked with sorting out liabilities inherited from the acquisition. In the first 3 months of 2013, the company reported $276 billion deficit, the first quarterly loss under Moynihan's tenure as CEO. Bank of America has gained a bad reputation over its sloppy and even sometimes illegal cooperative practices. In March, the bank was ordered to pay $9.5 billion to the Federal Housing Finance Agency to resolve allegations that it misled investors over the quality of mortgage loan sales.
Yeah, where does that money go? We've asked that question before.
General Electric.
We've gone over
DARPA.
Probably $1 trillion in fines that these banks have had to pay.
And not
where did all this money go?
Right. It's just zeros, man. They just take it off the computer.
I got a follow-up to you for your story.
Go ahead, because that's the end of this one. I'll go drop this in the chat. So,
a mortgage. You walk into your Bank of America and apply for a mortgage, and let's say it's $200,000. They create that $2,000 by $200,000 by striking a couple keys on their keyboard, and now they've created.
But first, they get a bunch of guys in a room together, and they all go, can we make some money off this, Joe? And then they tell you yes or no, whether or not they're going to give you the zeros.
Oh, no. They basically put you through the ringer,
right.
Give you an anal cavity exam.
Right.
You feel like you've been molested and, shit upon the whole time while you're getting your mortgage. And then you go to a closing. So they create this $200,000 out of thin air. And they've created an asset for themselves and a liability for you, because they don't have to have $200,000 in the bank to create that $200,000 liability.
They don't even have to have 2,000.
They have to have
anymore
10%. All they got to do is have 10%. But 5%, I think now is what they've gone down to.
Right.
But think about it. It keeps expanding and expounding. Because if you only have to have 1/10 of what you're loaning out, as soon as somebody puts more money into the bank, boom, you just create another liability for yourself. And we allow it to happen. Isn't that crazy?
Very. That's the whole monetary system, though. And it's been going on since before the gold standard was reduced, too. So, we can't even bitch about that, right?
I read a great article today, and I almost brought it up for the show. I may even take the first 30 minutes or 20 minutes on Friday's show.
Shit, you still got time? Go, shoot it, spew.
No. And I lost it now. I may have to go back to it. But it talked about going back to the beginning of our creation, of the monetary system and everything else. It's been designed from the get-go to benefit very few, select few, elite people,
right?
And
people that own the bank.
Yeah, nobody
people
else
started the banks, and that's why it's so goddamn hard to start a bank in this country now.
Yeah,
you can't just be Joey Who's what's it, and I won the lottery and I want to start a bank. Nope. You got to go through all kinds of regulatory hoops and blah blah blah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, that's it. I wish I would have kept that story up now because it's pretty good, but it was decently long. And there was 2 other ones that I liked better that if time permits, I can bring them up later.
Okay.
Motivation.
We can go back and forth, man. I mean, that was my story. So you get the next one. Go ahead.
Okay.
By the way, if anybody else wants to chime in on what we're talking about tonight, the phones are open, 718-717-8296. Or if you're on UCY.TV's friends list, you can hit me up and I'll add you to the call. 718-717-8296. The phones are open. Go.
No excuses.
None.
No excuses.
None.
What is it here? This is a letter. Yesterday, a student shared with me that one of her family members got her college degree at age 80. I also heard yesterday that the mother of one of my childhood friends is turning 80 this week. The woman is the most elegant woman I've ever known. Everything in their home is beautiful, taken care of.
At the frat parties, man.
With much love, and also went the way she dressed and carried herself. My mother talks of how she hadn't changed one bit, still elegant and glamorous as ever. 80 years old and rocking it. I'm called to remind you and us, everybody listening, that our excuses are getting in the way of our greatness, our glory, and a gift. What excuses are you using in regards to something that excites and intrigues you? Something that lights a little fire of wonder and passion within. I'm too old, too young, not experienced enough, don't have the money, I'm not in shape, don't know if I could pull it off. It just seems too difficult, and on and on. Believe me, I have used a heaping pile of excuses in my life. I still do some days, and this is one of the reasons I'm writing this, to remind myself too. When I was a youngster, I was talented in sports and music. My teachers encouraged me to take things to the next level. I was invited to play on junior varsity softball. I was invited to sing solo again and again. I politely declined because I didn't want to fail. I so wish I would have said yes. But all is as it should be, and those experiences and memories remind me to say yes to things that might scare me a little and make me grow and expand into my bigger and bolder self. When we say yes to something that we desire, the universe has a party. You already are a success when you say yes to something that you desire, so pat yourself on the back. It is our limiting thoughts that keep us small. That said, only we know when we are giving an excuse versus making a wise decision or setting a boundary. And this is truly where self-awareness and self-love truly set in. Personally, I know how it feels in my body and heart when I avoid, deny, or simply refuse something that is calling me forward. I know how it feels when I say no and need to say no. It's very different. Only I can define the difference, and only you know when it's an excuse or a wise choice.
That was a nice little article, man. Thanks.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's motivational. Just basically, before you say no to something, go out and do it. Remember all those things you've thought about doing?
Go do them.
Go out and do them.
Don't make excuses. Make memories. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, my turn. We're going to jump down a rabbit hole now, and this is going to irritate some people, I'm pretty sure.
I doubt it.
Oh, sure. I'm sure this one will. The FAA is looking into a $10,000 fine for drone recording of tornado disaster area. This happened just down the state from me. The Federal Aviation Administration, already facing criticism from private drone operators, has launched an investigation into drone use in the aftermath of the devastating tornadoes that swept across southeastern United States. The Arkansas Democrat-Gazette reported Tuesday that the FAA has initiated a probe into the use of an unmanned aerial vehicle to gather aerial footage of the terrible scene in Arkansas, where at least 14 people died over the past few days due to tornadoes. One of the worst hit areas was Mayflower, Arkansas, located just 40 minutes away from the state capital of Little Rock, where over a dozen people died. Storm chaser and videographer Brian Eminger sought to help the public understand just how bad the disaster was by sending a drone equipped with a video camera over Mayflower just moments after the storm had passed. A short video he posted on YouTube, which attracted nearly 2 million views within just 48 hours, showed emergency crews sifting through rubble where homes and buildings once stood. The images proved that the small Arkansas town was unrecognizable compared to just hours before. The vehicles and large piles of lumber strewn across the highway and elsewhere proved it. Imager's drone measures approximately 18 inches wide with small propellers that are about 8 inches long. He told the Gazette he used it in the past to help local TV stations obtain footage of hotel fires in Hot Springs, but can now face a $10,000 fine because of strict FAA guidelines. The agency's regulations prohibit UAVs from being used for commercial purposes, including reporting, although photographers and press watchdogs alike have complained that the rule, designed to keep drones out of the flight path of major aircraft, are in violation of the freedom of press guaranteed by the First Amendment. Proponents have also complained that frivolous restrictions on drone activity are needless limits that eliminate a potentially helpful tool for first responders. Matt Waite, director of the Drone Journalism Lab for College of Journalism and Mass Communications at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, previously made headlines when his class, which was learning how to use drones for journalistic purposes, received a cease and desist letter from the FAA forcing them to continue their instruction inside. The problem, Waite told Forbes, affects a variety of areas where UAVs could be incredibly useful. When questioned Monday on whether FAA had seen Imager's video, FAA spokesman Lynn Lunsford told the Gazette, "We are looking into it." If Imager is nervous about being on the hook for $10,000, though, a March court ruling can provide him some relief. The agency previously tried to levy a fine against Raphael Perker, a videographer whose company named Team Black Sheep uses drones to capture unique footage. Perker convinced Judge Patrick G. Garrity, I guess is how you pronounce that. That's very strange spelling. That there was no enforceable FAA rule or FAR regulation applicable to model aircraft or for classifying model aircraft as a UAS, unmanned aircraft system. The FAA appealed the decision, citing their air safety and security. The spokeswoman did not provide any details on whether the agency would seek legal action against Imager. And it provides a video there. So let's speak about this for a minute, Mr. Lance Musser. I'm going to drop this in the chat. What do you think about this? A $10,000 fine for flying your drone around, taking some pictures.
Well, when you posted that story, I was like, what? With big old question marks. But this is so reminiscent of I know it was in Colorado, the floods, and the drone people were willing to send out their top-of-the-line expensive drones with video imaging and geothermal
trying to help find victims.
Trying to help find victims in the flood, and the FAA said, go away, we don't need your help, even though they didn't have anything on the spot that ready to go.
Right.
So it's all about control, man. It's all about control.
They're
the only ones that if they can't fly them there, nobody else is.
But isn't there some kind of unrestricted airspace from ground level up to like, I don't know, 150 or 200 feet? You know, I mean, guys that fly ultralights and stuff like that, they don't have to have licenses. They don't have to go through any FAA training or anything like that. They can just go buy the damn thing, put it together in their backyard and take off if they got a long enough piece of grass, right? I mean, you should know a little bit about what you're doing, but the guy that countersued, this Perker guy, he has a right. I mean, it's a model plane. It's a model plane. It's a model helicopter. It's just got a camera on it, and I can see shit on the ground.
Yeah, I was about to say, as soon as you equipped it with a camera, it became
an unmanned aerial system.
Exactly. Unmanned aerial,
bullshit,
video.
Dude. They sell stuff like this on X-Healy all day long.
Oh, you can get a drone now with a camera for $139.
I know. That's what I'm saying. These things are model. How many kids got them for Christmas last year, for Christ's sake? I'd like to add that tally up and find out, right? I mean,
I sent you that video of the 4 kids walking down the boardwalk at Virginia Beach with a drone flying.
And he's just flying it over their shoulder, taking video of them walking down. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's got the little control in his hand.
So what are we going to have 10,000 FAA officers running all over the country now with guns and shit, finding every kid in his backyard that's taking pictures of his cat? Flying around. This is ridiculous, dude. This is ridiculous. The whole nanny state thing is so out of control. I can't even,
Control. And I think a big story today was, didn't the Supreme Court confirm the NDAA, that they
denied the lawsuit.
Right. So it's allowed now,
But all these states are nullifying it anyway. You know, they're not giving a hang what the feds say. So, but yeah, the lawsuit that they tried to file against the federal government, I guess that Panda filed, or I can't remember who filed it, but yeah, it's been tossed out. I don't know where it's all going, man. Where's this all going?
We're run by criminals. We're run by criminals.
Yeah. What's your next story? Go ahead. We'll just do a tit for tat. See if we can raise anybody's dander.
Mm-hmm. In reaction to the Supreme Court choosing dark money over earth and human rights in the recent McCutcheon decision. Briefly, what that is, that was the guy that wanted to give more money to PACs and stuff like that, McCutcheon.
Yep.
And so it touched on an issue becoming central to the movement. Has the democratic legitimacy of the U.S. government been lost? I was reading this earlier. This is how we've gotten to where we've gotten. We've raised this illegitimate government issue by quoting the Supreme Court Justice, former U.S. President, and a sitting U.S. Senator, Zeeson Flowers of Popular Resistance. The legitimacy of the U.S. government is now in question. By illegitimate, we mean it is ruled by the 1%, not of, but by and for the people. The U.S. has become a carefully designed,
plutocracy
that creates laws to favor the few. As Stephen Beyer wrote in his dissenting opinion, America law is now incapable of dealing with the grave problems of democratic legitimacy. As former President Jimmy Carter said on July 16th of last year, America does not at the moment have a functioning democracy. Granted, we're a republic and not a democracy, but he's right. Even members of Congress admit the problem. Long before McCutcheon decision, Senator Dick Durbin, Democrat from Illinois, described the impact of the big banks on the government, saying, "They own the place. We have moved into an era of a predatory form of capitalism rooted in big finance, where profits are more important than people's needs."
See, that's where everybody gets it wrong. Dick Durbin, who are you, man? Shut up.
He's on the right path. He's on the right path.
No, he's talking for votes, dude. This guy is so crooked, he couldn't park a car.
But he's still waking up some people, so, you know.
No,
yeah,
he's twisting the words around, though. He's called it a capitalist blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's corporatism. Capitalism is great. Capitalism is every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to go out and start a backyard job, a backyard firm, or, whatever. They can. This is not that. This is not that. This is corporatism. This is big companies running the government, because the banks own the big companies, and the guys that own the banks own the big companies too. This is corporatism. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. My little.
No. Every time I rattle off a paragraph, we can stop and talk about it.
No. I'm sorry. Shut up. I'm shutting up.
No.
I'm going to mute.
Go ahead.
Finish your story.
No, you got to cut in. Legitimacy of the U.S. government derives from rule by the people. If the U.S. government has lost its legitimacy, what does that mean? What's the impact? And what is our responsibility in these circumstances? We can go back to the founding document of this nation, the Declaration of Independence, for guidance. The revolutionary document begins by noting all humans are born with, and this is going to be a topic of discussion here for a minute, how do you say it? I know you're on mute. So alienable is how you had said it before. And I know I had said inalienable rights, and you and Chuck both jumped on me and said inalienable or alienable.
Right.
I actually went to the dictionary, and it can be said either way. It pronounces the word for you. You know how you can hit the button,
yep,
and it actually pronounces it both ways. So, I never did. I meant to always bring that up to you, but it did pronounce it both ways. Only because Americans aren't smart enough, I guess, as a mass to be able to pronounce it the right way.
Well, you know what a lien is, right?
Well,
when somebody puts a lien on something.
Yeah, it's taking possession of.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
You have unalienable rights.
Right.
That means no one can take them away from you, and you cannot give them away, even willingly.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And these rights, and it explains that to secure these rights, governments are instituted, and that government derives its power from the consent of the governed. Further, when the government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. They knew that these asshats would have us at the point we're at right now, and tried to make sure that we have a Second Amendment, not to go hunting, but to overthrow a corrupt and unjust
tyrannical government.
After we wrote about the lost democratic legitimacy of the U.S., in the United States, our findings indicate the majority does not rule, at least not in the casual sense of actually determining policy outcomes. When a majority of citizens disagree with economic elites and or organized interests, they generally lose. Moreover, because of the strong status quo bias built into the U.S. political system, even when fairly large majorities of Americans favor policy change, they also don't get it.
But see, here's where they got us stuck. Because our system only allows for two people.
Right.
And they're both working for the same people. So you get pissed off at a Republican, you vote in a Democrat.
I think our system allows for a third party, but our media only wants two party. Because there's independents, there's Green Party, there's libertarians. Yeah, but they can't get on for the airtime, right? They can't get on to the debates when it's down to two people. They just can't get into them. So, I mean, the system's set up for it, but the media has control of it right now.
Well, and I guarantee you, if any one of them started showing some real moxie toward running against the Democrat or the Republican, all of a sudden they would be shut down.
Yeah. Well, let this sink in. The Political Research Quarterly, found that only the rich get represented in the U.S. Senate. I know that's not a shock to you. The researchers studied the voting records of senators in 5 Congresses and found that senators were consistently aligned with their wealthiest constituents, and lower class constituents never appeared to influence the senators' voting behavior. The majority does not rule. Even when fairly large majority of Americans favor policy change, they do not get it.
Because we don't have lobbyists.
You're right. Now, for many of us, this is not news. But to have an academic study document it by looking at 1,700 policy issues and proving the lack of democratic legitimacy is a major step forward for people understanding what is really happening in the United States and what we must do.
What about us talking about them having a 3% approval rating for the last year? That doesn't have any difference? That doesn't make any difference?
Ain't that some shit? Before the Occupy movement began, we published the article, We Stand with the Majority, that showed supermajorities of the American people consistently support the following agenda. Tax the rich and corporations, end the wars, bring the troop home, cut military spending.
Eat the rich.
Protect the social safety net, strengthen Social Security, and provide improved Medicare to everyone in the United States. End corporate welfare for oil companies and other big business interests. Transition to clean energy economy, reverse environmental degradation, protect workers' rights, including collective bargaining, create jobs and raise wages, and get money out of politics. 60% of the people support each item on this agenda, and the supposed representatives of the people took the exact opposite approach on each issue. What?
I know. It's like talking in circles, right?
Yeah. While many
by the end of this article, we're going to have you all so confused you won't really give a shit what we said.
While many Americans think the government representing wealthy interests is new, in fact, it goes back to the founding of the country. Historian Charles Beard wrote in the early 1900s that the chief aim of the authors of the U.S. Constitution was to protect private property, favoring the economic interest of wealthy merchants and plantation owners rather than the interests of the majority of the Americans who were small farmers, laborers, and craft workers. And if you don't believe that, didn't it have to be to vote, you had to be a landowner?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. I mean, that kind of backs that up. The person who is
40 acres and a mule.
The person who is credited with being the primary author of the Constitution, James Madison, believed that the primary goal of government is to protect the minority of the opulent against the majority. He recognized that if elections were open to all classes of people, the property of landed proprietors would be insecure. As a result of these views, only 6% of the U.S. population was originally given the right to vote. And the first Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, John Jay, believed that those who own the country ought to govern it.
And they've been working that way ever since, taking all of our shit.
Yeah. Keep going.
Sure.
This resulted in the wealth of a nation being concentrated among a small percentage of the population, and their wealth being created by slaves and other low-paid workers who had no political participation in government. The many creating wealth for the few had continued throughout U.S. history through sweatshops, child labor, and now poverty workers. Like those at the nation's largest employer, Walmart. By putting property ahead of human rights, the Constitution put in place a predatory economic system of wealth creation. In fact, the Constitutional Convention is blocking the colonists' desire for democracy as economic elites organized a counter-revolution aimed at institutionalizing a counterforce to challenge the prevailing system of the 13 sovereign states in which some state legislators were controlled by a popular force. So even way back then, they still had lobbyists, if you will. They just didn't call them, this is before they were called lobbyists. The Constitution was written to minimize the direct expression of a popular will and block the American demos. In many respects, since the founding, the people of the United States have been working to democratize. That's a hard word for me to say.
Democratize.
The United States. Gradually, the right to vote expanded to include all adults. Direct election of U.S. senators was added as a constitutional amendment, but these changes do not mean we have a real democracy. The work is not done. The legitimacy of people ruling has not been achieved.
Shouldn't be hard for you to say. You said you were a Democrat before you woke up.
I was, and I mean, I still,
you sheep,
think that they're both full of crap.
There you go.
I mean, I do. I think they're both full of crap, but the Republicans, how could you sit there and say, I believe that way?
Let's not get into that.
Well, I mean, but there's so many people that do, that just align themselves with,
I know,
racism.
Because that's where they were brought up, man.
Things.
I know.
They'd vote for the donkey or vote for the elephant if they ran. It doesn't matter.
Right. Party line.
It's a party line, yeah.
1-800 FU. Oh, sorry.
This week, a former managing partner at Goldman Sachs, Nomi Prinz, wrote about the long history of how the nation's biggest bankers have controlled presidents throughout the last century. She wrote,
since 1913.
With so much in the power in the hands of an elite few, America operates more as a plutocracy on behalf of the upper caste than a democracy or a republic.
That's corporatism. It's the same thing. A plutocracy and a corporatocracy are the same thing.
Oh, is it?
Working for the elite.
So at least they got this one wording right.
Right.
Voters are caught in the crossfire of two political parties vying to run Washington in a manner that benefits the banking caste, regardless of whether a Democrat or Republican is sitting in that oval. In many respects, our task is to complete the American Revolution and create a real democracy where the people rule through fair elections of representatives, then there is increased direct and participatory democracy.
I saw a really good one on Facebook today. It said Republicans and Democrats are both cheeks on the same ass.
Oh, I've posted that one for a while.
Yeah. Is that it?
It is. I mean, there was a little bit more to it, but, how do we end the plutocracy?
Ignore them. Ignore them. It really is just that simple. I don't care what people think. I don't care what people say. It really is just that simple. If you ignore them and live your life the way you want to live it, they will eventually wither and die. Or they'll start bombing the shit out of people and then we'll have a revolution or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I fully on believe it's just that simple. Just ignore them and they'll go away. Because the only reason they have power is because we give them the power. We shake when they talk. Not me personally, but.
Well, and there's a better saying, when the government or the people fear the government, there's tyranny, and when the government fears the people,
there's freedom.
Freedom. And actually this does go on, and we have time, so I'll keep reading on it because it's, getting into something that you've always talked about.
I got two more stories, but one of them's really short, so.
You want to break away or?
No. We'll keep it. I mean, we still got almost.
It's not much longer.
Keep running.
Yeah. The actions of the illegitimate, corrupt government adversely impact every aspect of our lives. In order to protect the status quo, the government takes extreme anti-democratic measures to keep the public uninformed about what they are doing so they can push the agenda of transnational corporations and the wealthiest. Our current example is the TPP. This trade agreement has been negotiated in secret for more than 4 years, except for 600 corporate advisors who helped write the agreement. The media and public have only seen leaked portions, and Congress has to jump through hoops to see it. And because the TPP is classified as a secret, they cannot discuss it with their staff or constituents. Now Obama is pushing to fast track it through Congress with little congressional oversight. And while stalled because of citizen pressure,
that's right,
both parties want to find a way to pass fast track. Can anything be more anti-democratic than a secret negotiation with virtually no congressional review on an agreement that will affect every aspect of our life and change numerous domestic laws?
Yeah, Obamacare. Obamacare is right up there with it.
It did. You're absolutely right, and you can do a whole show on that one. Yeah. European nations, may have not been able to protect themselves from NSA spying because of trade agreements. On issue after issue, the American people want change, but they get the status quo. There are so many examples. The choreographed political battle over healthcare is one. The U.S. did not end up with change. We ended up with a healthcare system dominated by the insurance industry, expanding the neoliberal model of healthcare designed for investors, not patients. Despite the industry being among the most hated by Americans, the Affordable Care Act further entrenched its domination of healthcare. Americans were even forced to buy this hated product. Would you like to say anything about that?
No, go ahead.
On energy.
I ain't buying it. You buying it? I ain't buying it.
I don't have it. On energy, polls have shown people want clean energy economy. Want subsidies to big oil and nuclear energy ended, but instead they get the opposite. When people protest against pipelines, fracking, coal, offshore oil, and nuclear energy, what do they get? They get more pipelines.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, man.
Offshore oil, nuclear energy, and they get infiltrated and arrested for trying to get the government to respond to their demands.
But if you ignored them, they go away. They come out there and start digging on your land and tell you they got eminent domain. Shoot them and tell them to get off your land. The ones that are still walking. That's not
ignoring them. Ignoring them is letting them do whatever the hell they want.
Well, no, you ignore when they come by and say, "Hey, we're going to start digging on your lands." And no, you're not. No, you're not. That's ignoring them. No, you don't have any rights to it. I don't care what the government says. The government, that law is unconstitutional, man. And every law that's unconstitutional is null and void from its inception, and it's not to be followed, and it's not to be legally mandated because it's unconstitutional. And I'm guaranteeing you, of the 40-some thousand laws in this country, 40-some thousand of them are unconstitutional. Sorry, keep going.
On banking, when the people want bankers to be held accountable, oppose bailing out the big banks, when their derivative gambles fail, and want transparency in the private corporation known as the Federal Reserve, we get minimal regulation, no criminal prosecutions, and expansion of the big banks and minimal audit of the Fed. Bullshit. These are just a few examples of the many. A lot could be written about college tuition, corporatization of education, housing bubbles, and lack of GMO labeling, and much more. And the lack of legitimacy is also highlighted by the lawlessness of the government. The soon-to-be-released CIA torture report is already showing through leaks that, among other things, the CIA had black site torture centers around the world, lied to Congress and the American people about what they were doing, and continued torturing despite its failure to protect the country. Despite the seriousness of the crime of torture under both domestic and international law, the only person to go to jail for the torture was John Carrico, who exposed it. And also that girl, I remember that girl in Abu Ghraib went to prison. Is this how a legitimate government behaves, though?
No.
We also see the lawlessness approach to government in the dragnet surveillance program of the NSA. Does the Fourth Amendment mean nothing to the illegitimate government? After Glenn Greenwald and Laura Petraeus, after being threatened by politicians and pundits with arrest, refused to be cowed by threats and returned to the United States this week and were not arrested. Instead, they came back to receive multiple awards, including a Pulitzer. All these journalism awards show how out of step the U.S. security state is with the thinking of journalists is a vindication of Edward Snowden. So, they'll just tie everything into him. Mm-hmm. But journalism is also threatened. As Chelsea Manning, what's the real name?
Bradley. Private Bradley Manning.
Right, because they've already changed it in here. Appellate lawyers pointed out this week the fact that Manning was convicted under the Espionage Act without being shown to have any intent to commit espionage puts all journalism at risk. The media better join in helping Manning challenge this issue on appeal, or critical reporting will risk an espionage conviction. Control of the government by big business and the wealthy means we get policies designed to enrich the already wealthy at the expense of the poor, working, and middle class. It also means an expanding wealth divide and increasing poverty, a smaller share of profit going to workers, while corporations make record profits, and destruction of the planet while a few profit from frack gas, tar sands, nuclear energy, and oil. Didn't there a meme on Papa John's that says just because a corporation makes huge profits, it
doesn't mean we have to share it with anybody.
Right.
Especially our workers.
You asked the question earlier, how do you end it? The last part of this is, how do we end this plutocracy, which is corporate what?
Corporate, yeah, corporatism.
Right. Now that we know that we live in a plutocracy, a government ruled by the richest people, with only a false veneer of democracy, not a legitimate government where the people rule, what do we do about it? The reality that the government has no democratic legitimacy is liberating. Our civil resistance, sit-ins, marches, protests, disobedience of their authority should escalate. At the same time, our efforts to build alternative democratic institutions where we can participate in decisions should also increase. From the community level up, we know that we need to build institutions that are legitimate, i.e. ensure that our participation is deciding our future. Mm-hmm. So I guess this guy's saying just start local governments and give the finger to the feds.
Ignore them. Exactly. Because that's what they do to us. You were just going through that whole goddamn article. It was nothing but what I was saying. They ignore us, ignore them. Everything we say we want them to do, they do just the opposite. That's called ignoring us and doing what they want, doing what they feel. So ignore them right back. Mm-hmm. You got to pay your taxes. Who said that? Huh? Somebody say something? I thought I heard something. I'll ignore it.
And the rest of it the rest of it goes on and some other stuff, but that's the gist of it. And when people ask, how did we get here? It was designed that way from the beginning.
Absolutely.
You were a pawn in the game. You had no control over it, and you couldn't do anything about it.
That's right. Okay.
So you can't blame it on really the American people as much as we want to.
Well, yeah, because apathy let it happen. If people would have stood up for their rights instead of having them trampled on, a little bit at a time, incrementally, that's what happened. It was right. Incrementally. They kept us distracted with other bullshit and all these wars. And, yeah. Then they start waving the flag and our humans are better than those humans over there. Let's go bomb them.
Yep.
So, okay. I want to touch on this really quick. It's like right up the street from you. And I was going to see if maybe tomorrow you could run by here and maybe get some pictures of something that happened.
Where's this?
Crude oil train derails, catches fire, spills into Virginia's James River. The CSX freight train carrying crude oil derailed in Lynchburg Wednesday afternoon around 2 p.m., according to local authorities. How far is that from you?
Lynchburg?
Yeah.
3 hours.
Oh, well, I guess you can't run over there tomorrow afternoon then.
No. And it's actually about 6 hours, but it takes 3 days for anything dumped into the river up there to get down to where I'm at.
Right.
So I'll be on the lookout.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you can run out to the river and get an oil slick going by.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. A lot of it's on fire. Water burns when it's got oil in it.
Mm-hmm.
Causing extensive flames. That's what it says here. And dense black smoke to reach into the air. The city of Lynchburg said that between 12 and 14 crude oil tanker cars derailed next to the James River, though fortunately there have been no reported injuries. The cause has not been determined at this time, according to a statement posted by the city's website. WSET reporter James Girardi estimated that the tankers were no more than 100 feet from the river. You don't often imagine the James River on fire, said WSET anchor Len Stevens during his station's live broadcast. However, you can see the pictures here. Amherst County Public Safety Director Gary Rokes confirmed to WSET that there is product in the river, meaning crude oil, and that there are 3 cars in the river. 3 or 4 of the tankers were reported breached, ostensibly the source of the spilled oil. There were initial reports that downtown residents were being evacuated to a local gym, but when Mr. Rokes was asked about public safety in the Lynchburg and surrounding areas, said we're not evacuating anyone from Amherst County. However, Deputy City Manager Bonnie Svivik, I think that's how you pronounce that name, told the Washington Post that we have evacuated the downtown area from the river up to about 3 or 4 blocks. It looks like there's a buffer of trees between the river and any buildings, so it doesn't appear right now that any buildings will be affected. City Communications Director Joanne Martin told Chicago Tribune that 300 people were evacuated from downtown because of smoke. City authorities said that CSX officials were working to remove a portion of the train that had trapped workers in the Griffin Pipe Foundry. Okay, I guess this is like right next to a foundry and maybe it's blocking the exit or something? Possibly. Blah, 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 blah. CSX was scheduled to hold a hearing Wednesday morning in Washington, D.C. regarding the rail company's proposed expansion of the Virginia Avenue Tunnel in downtown D.C. The expansion has been criticized by local residents worried that the same crude oil that spilled in Lynchburg would threaten their neighborhoods near the Capitol. And there's a little video attached to this too, and actually, this was quite intense when it first lit off. I imagine this oil, if it was only 3 cars, it's probably burned itself off by now. However, the 3 that are in the water makes me kind of anxious. And that would be hell, if you can get some videotape of a tank car floating down the river, that would be great, dude. I'll go ahead and drop this in.
Pretty big.
I'll go ahead and drop this in the chat. Okie dokie. You got anything else, or can I hit this last one here?
Oh, no, hit it. I'm done.
Okay. And oh crap, I just did it.
I had 2 long stories, so I'm done.
Yeah. I think this last one here is going to kind of sum up everything that's going on the planet. So I think it's a good idea that we take a half hour and spend it on this. Because that's about what we have left. Again, if anybody wants to call in and comment on anything we've had to say tonight or talk about this next story that's coming up here, 718-717-8296. The phones are open. Or if you're on UCY.tv, give me a hit and I'll add you in. Scientists discover proof that humanity is getting dumber, smaller, and weaker. We have a very good example of that in the chat room as we speak.
I was about to say that, but you know.
Scientists have found that our bodies and our minds have both deteriorated significantly compared to our ancestors. In fact, just this week, a very prominent professor at Cambridge University said that our most highly trained athletes pale in comparison to ancestors of ours. The biggest reason for this, of course, is the degradation of the human genome. Groundbreaking research done by Dr. John Sanford of Cornell and others has shown that our genes contain tens of thousands of mistakes, mutations, and with each passing generation, even more errors are added and passed on. So it should be no surprise that our ancestors were bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter. The truth is, they had better genes. This kind of information comes as a shock to many people. It's widely assumed that general public humanity is progressing and that we are better both physically and mentally than our predecessors were. But that's not the case at all. In fact, research conducted at Cambridge University shows that we are weaker than we used to be and that the most highly trained athletes of today pale in comparison to those that lived thousands of years ago. In addition, earlier research at Cambridge University showed that our bodies are significantly smaller than they were thousands of years ago, and that our brains are also smaller. Stand by one, please. I'm getting a message. Hey, right on. Chuck wants to add in.
Sweet.
Yeah. He's always good to talk to. He's got good insight.
Absolutely.
Mr. Charles O. Chelly, adding to the call. Continuing. Most movies and television shows portray our ancestors as short, stupid, hunched-over people that could barely survive in a cold, cruel world. But that hard science is revealing a very different picture to us now. As I mentioned above, the primary reason for our decline as a species is the systematic deterioration of our genes. According to Dr. John Sanford of the Cornell University, the author of Genetic Entropy and the Mystery of the Genome, each one of us already carries tens of thousands of harmful mutations, and each one of us will pass on at least 100 new mutations to future generations. Many scientists believe that this will ultimately lead to something called mutational meltdown. The following is an excerpt. Oh, okay. Click the link. This is incredible stuff with absolutely staggering implications for most. For much more on all of this, you can check out a video, and I will drop this link into chat if you want to go watch these videos. There's a couple of things on here that are worth a watch. Let's see. Not only are our brains getting smaller, but humanity is also getting dumber. This sounds strange to many people, especially considering the technological boom that we have just seen in modern times, but it is actually true. In fact, a Stanford University biology professor recently published 2 papers for which he expresses the conclusion that humans have been getting dumber for thousands of years. Professor Crabtree, like Dr. Sanford, is convinced that this loss of mental capacity is due to the accumulation of errors in our genes. And to be honest, we can see the loss of mental capacity all around us. We talk about that weekly.
When you look at somebody and go, how have you made it this far in life?
Right. You got Velcro shoes on me? So what do you people think about all this? I really want to know. Chuck, want to share some thoughts with me?
All right. You got me now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You're in there 5 by 5.
No problem. It was just one of those weird little device issues there. I had to hang on a second. But man, you know, when you start to examine the idea that we have, you know, this chemical contamination as well, and you know, I mean, if you just look up bisphenol A and the sort of hypersexuality that goes on as far as like feminizing the population and all that sort of distortion, you know, along with all the genetically modified crap that we're all eating, how is it any sort of wonder that there's all of these so-called errors or mistakes or whatever in the genome at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Look at the, all the nuclear weapons that have been set off on this planet since the 40s. All that radiation flowing around, Chernobyl, Fukushima now. What else we got to mutate our genes? Chemtrails, food that's not really food. It's more like processed stuff.
Wiki says chemtrails don't exist.
Yeah, well, the government's admitting to them now, so Wiki's going to have to change that shit. So.
Oh, but they won't.
They might. You never know.
Lawsuits.
Yeah. It's free. It's open source, man. Anybody can click on there and add some stuff. So.
Don't be fooled by that.
That one can't. No, that one's government watched. As soon as you try to post the truth on a chemtrail on Wiki, it's deleted immediately.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you what else. There's a bunch of stuff on Wikipedia that's totally controlled by people that have an agenda. There's a whole sort of a lot of people don't realize this. There are a group of people that are sort of appointed to positions to be gatekeepers on Wikipedia.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, you can find
I'm
one
so
article.
Effing disappointed right now. I can't even tell you, because that was like my number one source for information on the planet.
You cannot trust it if you're not looking for something. I know you're being sarcastic, bro.
Yeah, that's one of Lance and I's favorite things. Is trust Wiki, man. It's in Wiki.
Yeah, well, I could just tell you that a breakdown just of the JFK assassination stuff a couple of years ago. They did a pretty in-depth thing about it. It was sort of like, I think you can find it if you type in the phrase, will the real Wikipedia please stand up? Yeah. I think if you type that in, they explain exactly how there's like a board of individuals that are appointed based on certain controls. And that was just a main focus on the JFK assassination, but it exists on every single level you could possibly imagine. I've even known people who
that's
are
the continuation of the dumbing down of this country, of this planet.
Yeah. But even stranger than that. Yeah. Get ready for this one though, because as we continue to push our MP3s out into the stream, I got to tell you, if you get listed as a public figure on there, you're going to have fun with that too, because I know people that are actually listed as persons of interest on there that can't even edit their own profiles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So
you can also sue people for slander.
Oh yeah.
So
of course
they'll have to watch their P's and Q's and stuff too. So, but anyway, let's get back on topic. The continuation of the degradation of the human genome. That's going to be our ultimate end. If we're going to get dumb enough to go ahead, Lance.
Think about it. 1,000 years ago, even 1,000 years ago, you had to rely on you. Period. You had to rely on you. You were continuously trying to reinvent stuff, and you were your own best resource. And now we're just lazy, and it just keeps continuing going on with our, distractions that make life easier, but then we lose all of our resilience. And like Chuck said, all the stuff we're eating and everything else couldn't be helping.
No, it's not. Plus the lack of the passing of knowledge down from father to son anymore. Mm-hmm. They burned down the Library of Alexandria for just that purpose, so that only a select few on the planet knew what was really up.
Well, right, and that's part of the other problem is that, at one point societies were organized for the actual sharing of knowledge, and that has disappeared. As much as, and it's sort of counterintuitive to the idea of the internet and everything else, because really in this age we should be sharing knowledge on a much broader scale than we ever have. But the funny thing is that there's so much garbage even on the, in the blogosphere or whatever you want to call it at this point, which is, just so much disinformation, so much crap, so much nonsense that you're still having to sort of cipher out the knowledge for yourself that has any sort of validity. And it's really a damn shame as far as I'm concerned. There was a lot of hopes for this stuff. You guys remember before there was an internet, And the ways that we had to share information were entirely, like you had to be motivated in order to gather information, and you did. And
you had to be motivated in order to contact somebody. If you wanted to,
right.
You had to actually grab a pen and a piece of paper and sit down and write a letter, for Christ. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. And I mean, even with the phone systems that they developed, I mean, I told you stories before where, I would get a hold of, phone books in other places. I mean, you literally couldn't, like, let's just say, I was sitting on the East Coast and I wanted to talk to somebody in California, unless I knew somebody who knew somebody or whatever else, or I knew the person directly, I would have to find myself, one of those, what do you call those, directory assistants, books or
411. Can I help you?
Used 411, yeah, and but a lot of times they didn't have everything listed, but maybe you could find the business if you knew where they worked, and you had to actually, do a little bit of deductive reasoning, which again is another one of those lost arts, just like critical thinking and everything else. But I don't know. It's like the more we advance things, the more we screw them up. It seems collectively, you know what I mean? And I mean to say we, as in we as a species. And sometimes I hesitate to even share myself into that pool. But truth is truth, man, and it's just an unfortunate kind of disaster. People
seem to confuse the truth with facts, though. They think that's because something's a fact that it's the truth, and that facts can be skewed. It used to not be that way, but it is that way now. I don't know how it got that way, but the truth is the truth, right?
Well, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts.
Well, right, but the rise of advanced cherry picking is kind of like what's gone on over the years. So, if you take a set of facts and you collect as many of them as you can,
if it's skewed in one direction, right?
Right. That's where I was going with it. Is if you have an agenda to begin with and you simply select facts to fit that agenda. I mean, like I told you before, we could create a storyline that basically tells any story we want, so long as we ignore the right facts and sort of spotlight the correct ones too. I mean,
and that helped lead to this whole we know nothing, because they can take those facts and that are skewed to their agenda, and they can make a little 30-second soundbite out of it, right? And they can pop that on the headline news and make everybody on the planet believe, or everybody that saw the newscast anyway, believe what they say, right?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, and it's not even just the reach of that is beyond who happens to be staring at the screen at the moment. Because look at it this way, how many times have you run into somebody who believes a fact, believes something to be a fact, who believes something to be a truth simply because a couple of their friends told them that that's the way it was. You know what I mean? It's like the secondary sort of residual programming that occurs. Like you program enough people around other people, it contaminates others who had nothing to do with the original broadcast, the original programming. You know what I mean? So it spreads like a disease, disinformation, really. Exactly.
Trollisms, right?
Well, that too. Just the, and I know everybody loves to point to it, but I mean, look, if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, after a while, people begin to accept it as the truth because they keep hearing it over and over again.
And they don't have the gumption to go figure it out for themselves. They're too lazy.
This is the trouble. This is definitely the trouble.
Stack it on with all the other distractions, right?
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, that's the other thing is you sort of, conflagrate the reality with a bunch of nonsense too, I mean, when you turn around and you think about the fact that they're still talking about this damn plane, they're still talking about this situation.
Yeah, there's stories floating around about it, but that's not going anywhere, man. People aren't buying it until they show the goddamn plane sitting on a tarmac somewhere and all the hostages, because that's what they are at this point. They've been taken against their will. Because the plane didn't crash. It's not in the bottom of the ocean. But we're getting way off topic now. I want to get back on topic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I still believe that thing was destroyed, but we'll leave it at that.
Okay. So the whole degradation of the genome thing, where this article is leading is that because we pass on 100 new mutations a year, or a generation, I guess it's every 10 years, right? That's a generational gap is 10 years. So every 10 years, 100 new mutations get passed on. Eventually, we're going to dumb ourselves to death.
I thought a generation was 40 years.
Is it? I thought it was 10. I don't know. I don't know why I got the 10 number. Maybe it is 40 years.
Gap. The idea of the gap is every 10 years. A generation is 40 years, yeah.
Okay. So every 40 years we pass on 100 new mutations to the next round of humans. And they're saying that eventually we're going to dumb ourselves to death. That we'll get to the point where there's so many mutations in our genome that we won't even be able to get up out of bed, right? Feed ourselves, wipe our asses, talk, open our eyelids. That's what's coming.
It was a fairly terrible movie a couple of years ago, but that Idiocracy movie, not all that unrealistic in my mind. I found it pretty scary, actually, to think about that. Because, look...
is there any way to stop it? According to this guy, this is just a thesis now. Don't take this as fact, right? This article is just this guy's thesis. But what he was saying in there, how the generations are progressively getting more stupid, you can see that.
Oh, absolutely.
Walk into a Dairy Queen.
Walk into Walmart.
Yeah. Walk into a Walmart.
The sad thing is, though, that now, look, we're all also old enough to remember what type of stuff was floating around in the 1980s about this. And in the 1980s, they were discussing about, how the arc was on its way up, how people would be more intelligent in the next generation, how people would be evolving sort of like upward because of technology. We would have it would free us up. This was the concept anyway, this sort of epigenetic reaction to the environment as technology increased. And now, in hindsight, we can see that this did not help anything. They were talking about even our fingers increasing in length and all these other odd little things that they were discussing about the shifting genome. I think really, regardless of how much they seem to have learned here at this point, I think that there's still much to be discovered and really unknown. And I think it's a more realistic view that we're being pulled downward instead of upward. But 30 years ago, this was a much more hopeful forecast for the human race, really. From all of these sort of studies that were being conducted in in any of these the medical journals, the idea of I'm telling you, this was the stuff that was being discussed in universities then, and I knew it because I visited some of them, but it's just it's weird to think about it this way now, and I think that realistically though they don't really know the long-term effects of all this poisoning of the species that's gone on, from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a reproductive standpoint. All these things are coalescing into like a fine sludge instead of the natural evolution that we're all supposed to be party to here.
Yeah. Joe says it's being done deliberately.
I don't know about that. It's been for so long, especially if they're saying for the last thousands of years. It might be being done more so targeted now. Yeah.
But as far as human apathy and human laziness and, Yeah,
but see, that's my point about that thousands of years is that this is not, it's shifted in the past 30 years where they thought we were going. So, something has changed in the past generation. It's no longer on that sort of
human apathy.
Positive. Yeah, but human apathy's existed for a long time, and it has increased recently, that's for sure, but I think there's more to it than that. I don't think at any point in time we were confronted with this biological warfare on all sides of us to the degree that we are now. Maybe it's just me.
Well, we're surrounded by it every day. Nobody seems to be doing anything about it.
There you go. You talk about every time you come on the air, pretty much, you talk about how you look up in the sky and you see that crap. I mean, you know.
There's, 300 million people in this country that should look up and see that crap, and nobody else seems to be bitching.
Yeah,
there's a select handful of us that are awake enough to try to start a stink or create a kerfluffle or however you want to term it. But we don't seem to be. I mean, we gradually make dents here and there, but they're going at such a rapid pace down the hole. I don't think we got time to plug it. If you get where I'm going.
Well, that's the thing. Unless it collapses on itself, I don't think that we seem to catch it in time. I mean,
right. So I mean, even the generational pass on. I don't think we're going to have time enough to dumb ourselves to death. I think that the government's going to do it for us. Well,
I think both things are a contributing factor. I think that we're doing it to ourselves, and they're doing it to us too. It's multidimensional, really. It's just I don't know. It's just one of those. It's like the inescapable to me, because it just seems like the only way to avoid poison is to be dead, basically. Because if you got to breathe, drink, or eat anything, even if you try to grow it yourself, it gets contaminated from the air and the water. I mean, it's just
Remember John Travolta and Boy in the Bubble?
Yeah, that'd
be about it.
Excellent movie, man.
that'd be about the only way you could protect
evidently NASA's coming out with these new X2 suits or whatever that they're getting ready to take up into outer space. So, maybe we can all just buy one of those, and it's got its own filtering mechanism thingy and oxygen generation system and whatever. So,
maybe we all just. You
think?
Yeah, but the crap that's going to be manufactured out of is probably poisonous to us too.
And it's coming from the lowest bidder too, because it's a government project. So,
well, that's scary enough.
Consideration, right?
So, God knows what kind of degradable plastic pieces will be in that. I don't even see the hope in the technology. It's just not there. So it's I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm in sort of a dark mood tonight or something. But it seems very hopeless to really affect the change in the direction that we're devolving to. Sadly, I mean, there's just very little that you can do about the rest of the world, and even when you try and connect to it all, it's all very sickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that's a somber note. Sorry to kind of put a stop to everything there, but
No, I mean it's the way this whole thing's devolving.
Devolving's a good word.
It is. I mean, look at the way.
I mean, Honey Boo Boo, Walmart, even Duck Dynasty to a point, but I mean, there's just so many examples of dregs of society, if you will. Miley Cyrus, quit making stupid people famous. Isn't that what the saying is?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just helping dumb down society.
Look at the song lyrics. I saw a thing on song lyrics a couple of days ago where they were talking about, the way songs were written back in the 50s and 60s and 70s compared to what's out there today. Talking about whores and bitches and, it's just, and it all adds up, man. Music affects your soul.
Video games and rock and roll music.
Now, look, there once was poetry in music. There once was, a creativity to it. And whether you understood it or agreed with it, you could kind of see the validity in it. One way or another. I mean, but this generation again, I mean, they're catering to the lowest common denominator as always. And, that's just the way of things. I mean, it's kind of gone that way. Like I was, telling Lance, and I know you probably saw this little picture I passed around on social media, and I forget where I got it from now, but, did you see the 3 glasses sitting there picture?
No, didn't see that one.
Okay. There's 3 glasses. I'll describe it for you real quick. There's 3 glasses there, and one glass says, I'm half full. The next glass says, I'm half empty. The third glass is pointing at himself going, I think this is piss. Because they're all filled with yellow liquid.
Right,
and, you know, I think that, unfortunately we're in the third glass category here, you know, where it's not half full, it's not half empty. We're actually looking at it going, what the hell is it? Yeah. And it's, you know, I often wonder, though, that the people that are making these decisions, that are allowing this stuff to go on, that are lining their pockets with the blood and death and disease of other people, I often wonder if they understand even remotely how much damage they're doing. I mean, not the people at the top, because we could have a whole discussion about the demonic virtue of that. But regardless of that, I mean, think about the amount of individuals that are employed to do this stuff. Does nobody understand that they're killing themselves and everybody else with this garbage?
But they believe the propaganda. Well, no, they also believe the propaganda. You can't tell me, unless these are all drone planes flying over us, you can't tell me that those people don't have social media of their own and they see the posts that contain what's in those chemtrails and they talk about it every day and what it causes and blah, 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 blah. You can't tell me that those pilots don't know that. You are not that stupid. People have to elect to be that stupid. You see what I'm saying? So either they buy into the propaganda that, you know, that the government's telling them, or whoever's, you know, sending them out to fly the plane. Don't believe everything you're seeing on social media, man. They're going to talk about it being poison, but we're just trying to save the planet. You're doing a good thing. Keep waving that flag, you know.
Exactly.
Well, sadly,
I mean, they're in front of the engines. They can't see.
They got to flip that switch.
True, but sadly, every day, as you guys are both well aware, every day there is, you know, another batch of babies born that eventually will be 18, 19 years old, and will be able to be sold on the idea that they're doing something good for everybody else. You know, and you know, we give them nice uniforms, and we train them to do some useful things, and send them to do the dirty work of the people that have the financial levers in their hands. And that's really a terrible thing, but I mean, sometimes, you know, I know it's hard not to imagine that these guys have a view where they would, you know, see all this stuff or catch some of it somewhere, but they start to disbelieve it because they categorize it all as, you know, look, this is just conspiracy theory. This is just kooks screaming. You know, we're no different than the stereotypical guy who would be standing on a street corner in the city screaming about the CIA beaming radio waves into his head. Even though, guess what? They probably are. Yeah.
They're telling you what to say right now.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Either that or I got voices. Might just be voices.
Listen, as long as they're not arguing with each other, we're okay.
They do sometimes, man. It's hard to go to sleep.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, we got about 10 minutes left in the show. Who's got a hot topic?
Not me.
Well, I don't know. This weather thing is freaking me out a little bit because, you know, you were saying that you saw.
Get there?
It was pretty rough. I'm glad that the main funnels and the tornadoes actually missed right where I'm standing. Mm-hmm. They went to like right in between, like where me and my kids are, which was pretty strange. And, you know, so we were going back and forth, but I mean, every electronic device we had in the house was screaming at us that, we were in an imminent threat area and all that kind of fun stuff. And, everything was being broken into.
Yeah. Just watching the weather crap drop online was amazing. Some of the pictures of the tornadoes is, oh my God.
Yeah, but see, weathermen all over the place, and I mean, in this state, and it seems like every state that I happen to just run across clips on, they're all saying, though, they've never seen this before. You know, it makes me wonder what the hell's going on.
It's biblical.
It is biblical.
I mean, come on, man.
No, it is. I mean, this is how many times over the last 15, 20 months have you seen reports of weather that's never before seen on the planet?
And that's
first time in recorded history, biblical.
Yep.
You know, they got 26 inches of rain in the Pensacola area in less than 16 hours, man. Tell me that's not biblical rain.
I saw that. That was pretty crazy. But, like I said, watching it here, though, it was really strange because it gets eerie in
pretty
between.
Crazy. I saw a picture of a child that the parents put the child in a canoe in their living room, and she was floating on 3 feet of water in their living room. Mm-hmm. That's a little bit beyond pretty crazy.
Listen, they were abandoning people. They were not abandoning. They were evacuating people from their attics.
Oh, I know. It's just like Hurricane Katrina, man, but there wasn't no hurricane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
there wasn't no advance warning on this one either. I mean, they were warning for storms and shit like that, and tornadoes floods. And stuff, but they had no idea that there was going to drop 26 inches of rain in a day.
Yeah, but this doesn't even look remotely natural. I mean, it's
no, it's not natural, dude. It's not natural. It has to do with all the shit they're spraying over us all the time, and the everything else they got going on. I don't know about this whole HAARP thing. I gotta.
Well, you notice nobody's come out like Dabu 7 or Suspicious Observer on the Moore tornadoes and the other ones last year. I mean, they were out within a couple of days going, look, this is where the electrical thing got turned on.
Here's the scalar square.
Nobody's come out saying it this time.
Right. Because this has to do with the tilt of the planet. This has to do with magnetics, the ionosphere, lots of different. We're supposed to be in a solar maximum, people. This is supposed to be.
It's going quiet.
The big year of the solar maximum, right? This is when we're supposed to see all the X flares headed toward the planet and blah, blah, blah. Nada.
It's going quiet.
Nada. We're going into a Maunder minimum. You people better keep your wool sweaters and shit handy, because this is going to be ugly for a few years, I think. We're going to start getting some epic snows, epic cold. You watch.
We did this year.
Yep. It's going to happen more and more and more, man. I'm telling you. It's cyclical. This whole planet is cyclical. The universe is cyclical.
Mm. Mm-hmm. But the oddness for me though is not even necessarily in the severity of it, but the sort of irregularity of it. Because, like I said, what seems to happen here, and this I have no memory of that I can recall in my lifetime anyway, where weather would change so drastically, in such a short period of time. I mean, it's very eerie to watch, a shift from bright sunlight to, devastating, like completely flushed areas really, really fast. It's like the speed of it is just, it's really strange. I don't know what to make of that, I mean, it could be because of these other odd things that they're underreporting about, like you were talking about, the magnetic, the magnetic sort of atmosphere of the planet. I mean, remember I dropped you that article about the hole that was there?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody had reported on that the whole time it was there. I mean, it was probably in existence for like 6 months where we were getting really baked by the sun for a while. Yep. And nobody even bothered to say anything about it until after it had already passed. You know what I mean? Even the Science Watch people, and even from NASA and
don't believe anything NASA says, man.
Oh no, I'm aware of that, but I'm just saying
never a straight answer.
That's right.
No, of course not. But I mean, even when they have something that they could report that's remarkable about this kind of stuff, to think that that's not affecting everyone and everything on the planet is just foolish. So, who knows what we're going through now, where we're seeing these drastic sort of sudden changes in things. I mean, normally you had some sort of warning. I mean, I know tornadoes have always been one of those things where you don't necessarily get an immediate warning, but they've improved on that stuff a lot, since the days of, Twister the movie and people thinking they understand tornadoes based on that. But,
It's going green!
Yeah, there you go. We're going to put up this thing with these cut up Coke cans up into the air. And come on. But, just using radar technology now, they're watching this stuff shift so fast that, within 90 seconds, the entire area changes. Yeah. 90 seconds. I mean, that's
the Doppler wind speed is pretty cool. I mean, if you actually know how to read that radar and you can see those return echoes, you can pretty much pinpoint where the twister is. I mean, granted, you've got that delay, you know, from the sweep to where it's got to go through the processor and come back to you. It takes like about 3 seconds.
Oh yeah, and you can see the two temperatures rubbing up against each other and creating that friction that's going to turn into it. You can actually watch it start to happen before it happens.
Right. Well, you can see, you can see the winds going toward the radar and away from the radar, and that's where you got the, you know, if they butt up against each other, that's where your hook is. You know, that's where the hook in the atmosphere is, right? That's
right.
And it's pretty cool. And those guys, man, like Timmer and a couple of them other, they get so close to those storms. It's, I mean, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, last year got killed too.
Yeah. But even those guys who know exactly, I mean, you and I have a really rudimentary understanding of that stuff when we look at it, but I mean, those guys who are trained to understand it, you know, not local weather jackass with, you know, the sport coat on, but I mean, the guys who actually understand this stuff, are looking at it, and they're even remarking that, this stuff is changing really, really fast. Like
because
all of a
it's
sudden.
being affected by other things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how they're doing it. I can't really put my finger on how they're doing it. The whole HARP thing and, you know, how they're making it mesh with the chemtrail or what. I don't know. But it's definitely not for real unless we're unless the planet's getting ready to shake us off like a bad case of fleas or something. That's entirely possible too, because almost every volcano on the planet is active right now. You know.
But basic common sense tells you that if they're spraying a bunch of metallic particulates into the air and then they're screwing around with electromagnetic fields, what's going to happen?
Yeah, they can make bulges in the atmosphere and make low pressure systems move, and yeah, I've heard all that shit too.
Yeah, I mean
But I also heard this, and this has been predicted for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that one day a time will come when the Earth will have had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're about there. Because we've just about dug every hole we can dig and pulled every ore we can pull out of her, cut down all the trees that we can cut down without completely killing ourselves, you know what I mean? So when the planet dies, humans die. And I think the planet's dying. She's not going to go anywhere. She's going to be reborn. But I don't think we're going to be around to see it.
We should go to Inner Earth.
I believe they would kick our ass if we showed up. You guys fucked up the outside. Ooh, man, I almost made it through the whole show without an F-bomb, and I just did one right at the last.
Oh.
Anyway.
Yeah, you almost made it.
Almost made it. But anyway, peace and love, everybody. You know how this show ends. Go buy your $20 worth of canned goods. Start a garden. Spend your money on things you need. Mm-hmm. Don't leave it in the bank for them to take.
No, please don't.
No. We'll see you guys Friday. Hang on. Anti-Media Radio is coming up next with Nick Burnaby. Y'all sit tight. UCY.TV because you see why. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Lance. You're my brother. I love you. We'll see you guys.
Take care.